You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I am Robin Morgan, and today we have an eclectic program for you. We're sort of all over the map, but in very interesting ways. First and most importantly, Soraya Chemaly is here. The thinker, the writer, the activist, my friend and my colleague at the Women's Media Center. She heads the speech project. And a book author of remarkable work, one of which, the latest of which, we're going to be discussing today. So there's her, and then there's also, we're taking on Haiti, and what's happened to Haiti, and how it's been highlighted and spotlighted, and then utterly forgotten. And we're taking on CEDAW, which you might or might not remember, stands for Convention to End All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is quite a mouthful and not at all accomplished, not even halfway or a quarter or an eighth. So there's all that and more coming up, and you stick with us. But right now, we have to go inside the headlines. Haiti is in agony again. When the Haitian people ultimately won independence from France, Haiti became the first country to be founded in the world by formerly enslaved people. The aims of that revolution, which was a series of conflicts between 1791 and 1804, was the overthrow of the French regime in Haiti by the Africans and their descendants who had been enslaved by the French, and it was also for the establishment of an independent country founded and governed by formerly enslaved people for the first time. The vast majority of the population of Haiti, then the extremely financially successful French colony of Saint-Dominique, or Saint-Domingo, consisted of African slaves. The rest consisted of white plantation owners, white artisans and shopkeepers, and affranchis, free people of mixed or African descent, some of them wealthier than some of the white artisans and shopkeepers. The causes of the Haitian Revolution included the affranchis' frustrated aspirations, the brutality of slave owners, and an inspiration borrowed from the French Revolution, because the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizens calls for more freedom had a huge effect. In May 1791, Paris granted French citizenship to landowners, which included some affranchis and excluded some whites, leading to civil war. A general slave revolt in August started the revolution, and its success pushed France to abolish slavery in 1794. And the Haitian Revolution outlasted the French Revolution. You will remember that when Jefferson visited France as ambassador and had Sally Hemings with him, she and her brother, enslaved back in the United States as Jefferson's property, found themselves free, and they didn't have to return. The Spanish began to enslave people in the New World. It was started with the native Taino and Siboney people, excuse me, and spread. And of course, the French picked up on it. Thousands of slaves were imported from other Caribbean islands and met the same fate. The former slave Toussaint Louverture became a leader of the slave revolt and made himself ruler. Napoleon sent General Charles Leclerc, who think he was a cousin, to overthrow Toussaint Louverture and restore French rule. But Haitians, led by Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Henri Christophe, prevailed over the French, and Dessalines declared Haiti independent in 1804. He also declared himself the Emperor of Haiti. After the gold mines, the main ones, were exhausted, the Spanish left and were succeeded by the French. who established their permanent settlements, including the French West Indies Corporation, which took control of the area. And landowners in western Hispaniola imported many numbers of African slaves, who totaled as many as 5,000 in the late 17th century. Color was extremely important. Who was which shade when? And mulatto, so-called leaders, were infuriated by the restoration of the restrictions on their particular caste. Both blacks and mulattoes were enraged by reports that France had re-established enslavement in Guadeloupe and Martinique. And meanwhile, the French were heavily weakened by an epidemic of yellow fever, and Leclerc succumbed to it and died. That the combination of the Louisiana Purchase by Jefferson and yellow fever did him in, and May 1803 signaled Napoleon's intention to withdraw from North America. Now, it's interesting, you might remember that when we were talking about Native Americans dying mostly of imported diseases to which they had no immunity, we made an exception of Haiti because the Caribbean peoples had experience with yellow fever, and they did not succumb. So the French were done in. In 1804, the entire island was declared independent under the Arawak-derived name of Haiti. And many European powers and their Caribbean surrogates ostracized the country, fearing the spread of slave revolts. But reaction in the United States was mixed, because slave-owning states did all they could to suppress news of the rebellion, but merchants in the free states hoped to trade with Haiti rather than with Europe. It wasn't until 1825 that France finally recognized Haiti's independence, and then only in exchange for a large indemnity of 100 million francs, with a repayment period until 1887. And then followed a very agonized period of many different, sometimes observing the color line, many different rulers taking the place of each other, and always pretty much backed by gangs. There were a few moments when democracy seemed to almost raise its head, but not so far, not yet. Today, a New World Food Program report notes that nearly 5 million Haitians in this new crisis face acute food insecurity. And armed gangs, they are the gangs again, seized farms and harvested crops north of Port-au-Prince. The majority, by the way, of Haitian women eat less food than men. That's a Plan International statistic. It's a group that supports equality for girls. Schools are shuttered. 6 out of 10 hospitals are closed. The ports are dead, and fear keeps people at home. And normal life, well, it just isn't normal. Utterly disrupted in the capital, in Port-au-Prince, where more than half a dozen gangs have gone on rampage since 2021, when the country's president was assassinated. The UN recently quantified the violence in Haiti as the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, with an explosive number. More than 1,500 people were killed in 2024 as of the end of March. That's very early. It's a deadly count. It is what the UN terms, cataclysmic situation. And it's even harder to quantify the violence against humanity, in particular women and girls, by the warring gangs. The United Nations itself has been warning, at least since 2021, when the President Moise was killed, that women and girls are not collateral damage of the fighting. They're actual targets. They've been sexually assaulted, they've been mutilated and forced into sexual slavery, etc. Now, this is not the first time that Haiti has witnessed sexualized violence, at least since the 1990s, when the country experienced a military coup that overthrew President Jean-Bertrand Aristide. While Haiti is notoriously impoverished and disordered, which are legacies of colonialism, The current violence stems from decades without a standing army and a strong police force. So gangs have been used in lieu of them. A feminist Haitian group, Marie-Jeanne, surveyed 299 women in marginalized Haitian neighborhoods in May of 2023. That's about a year ago. And it found 1 in 5 women had been raped. More than 60% of the women were internally displaced due to the violence. And in addition, the UN integrated force in Haiti, known as BINUH, B-I-N-U-H, BINUH, found that gang members have perpetrated rape in territories that they themselves control. On May 25th, 2023, 2 young women who cooked for a local gang were raped because they allegedly had told their families information about the gang. The men then burned the women alive, Binu reported. Experts are now also seeing what they call collective rape, which is systematic. And when rape is systematic, it can be prosecuted as a crime against humanity, but who's going to do the prosecuting? Because Haiti has now fallen off the headlines. It occupied them for a brief moment there in the so-called sun, but now it's no more. It's been driven away by larger conflicts, more dramatic conflicts. Ukraine, because that's Europe, and white people fighting white people. And then there's the Middle East, which has been going on for so long no one can remember when it began. Yeah, there's the Middle East. And Haiti, the first country in the world that enslaved people, won in a revolution and began to govern. Haiti, at the moment at least, it doesn't stand a bloody chance. And now it's time for our first break. But I'll be back in just a moment with our guest, who today is Soraya Chemaly, a colleague of mine at the Women's Media Center. She heads the Speech Project. She's an author. Well, you'll hear a lot more about her and from her, and that's coming up in just the flick of an eye. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Soraya Chemaly, my guest for the conversation, is also a dear friend. She's an award-winning writer, and she's an activist whose work focuses on the role of gender, otherwise known as women's oppression, in culture, in politics, in religion, and in media. She is the director, in fact, of the Women's Media Center Speech Project, everything that happens online and doesn't, and an advocate for women's freedom of expression and expanded civic and political engagement. A prolific writer and speaker, her articles have appeared in Time, The Verge, The Guardian, The Nation, HuffPost, and The Atlantic. And you can follow her online in many ways at S. Chemaly, that's Chemaly, and learn more about her at sorayachemaly.com. And the book we're going to be discussing today is her new About to Land tome, which is just fine, really fine, called The Resilience Myth. We'll get into that. Soraya, welcome back to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you, as always. It's always a delight.
Well, listen, this is a real delight. And I remember when you were tearing your hair over the writing of this book, but it is it's worth every syllable. Well, first of all, okay, hello. It is called The Resilience Myth. New Thinking on Grit, Strength, and Growth After Trauma, by the best-selling author of Rage Becomes Her, Soraya Chemaly. Who is you? The Resilience of Myth. I am so glad you wrote this book. And I was hyperventilating all the way through reading just the introduction because it just blows away all of this power of positive thinking and happy cheery and cheery happy and let's make the best of it and everything happens for a reason and all of this crap that we are being assaulted with all the time, which is really a form of, you call it bootstrapping. That's one good word for it. I would call it also patriarchal propaganda.
Absolutely.
And it's propaganda on and racism. It's propaganda on the state of the world. It's propaganda in terms of, oh, don't be sad about the planet dying. It'll be all right. Everything will be fine.
You're exaggerating.
Yeah, that's right. You know, and I'm so in love with you for saying straight out, like a grown up, hey, everything is not all right, and everything's not going to be all right automatically, and it's not just up to you and your bootstrapping and your positive damn thinking. Just congratulations.
Well, thank you, and thank you for reading it and thinking about it, and very often I think when we're in this position, it's really, what are we seeing around us? What are we hearing from other people as we go through life? And so many people have said similar things, but there's just this self-care industrial complex.
Oh boy, is there
highly
ever.
remunerative.
Yeah.
Like, even the title of this book, which I really struggled over, particularly the subtitle, until frankly I just threw in the towel, in order to even make it into the realm of conversation. Words like grit and strength and growth, also because of things like algorithms,
of course,
kind of have to be part of it. And
even though people don't know what they mean, really, even though they have no meaning, really, even though it doesn't matter.
Even though it doesn't matter. And, as we'll discuss, there are definitely clear benefits and advantages to thinking in certain ways, but the overall problem is that we don't have any limits. We have no recognition of when enough is enough, when we should forbear.
No boundaries.
When we should stop. Right. No boundaries, right? Yeah. And it's just like, yes, run through the goalposts and never stop.
Yeah. I sometimes think that if there had to be one word, it would be simply enough.
Enough. Yes. Mine right now is just refusal.
Yeah, there's that too. I've noticed, by the way, and bravo for this, that there is a direct line of thinking between your last book, which was a great, wonderful bestseller, a new feminist classic, Rage Becomes Her, and this book. Because it's true. There's a real through line because, in other words, this is a woman who is not afraid to stand up and to say, I'm tired of this shit and I'm not going to take it anymore. Whether it's...
Well, we're all there, right? Yeah. So many of us are right there.
Yeah, but many people don't... Yeah, but many people don't acknowledge it. Or they acknowledge it, but at a slant, so they don't get directly at it. You've got a line in the introduction, I think, the preface or something, that if resilience has an opposite, where is it? Here it is. If resilience has an opposite, it's not weakness or dependence. It's loneliness. Because your premise as you build the book is that, in fact, resilience is not something that comes from the grit of isolation and the individual strong, purposeful, heroic figure, which is a patriarchal figure, male or female.
It is. It's a hero's journey.
That's right. But it comes from interaction with not only others, but other life forms, but other people, other everythings, that creates a whole that is alive and communicates with itself. And so that's a very different prescription than grit in solitary,
Right.
Shackleton on the
And
South Pole, kind of.
that
Uh,
never ceases to entertain me.
oh,
All the
Shack.
Shackleton stories, all the
That's an
glorification.
amazing set of writing a chapter. I mean, that is what you've done with him is incredible,
Well,
incredible.
he was a remarkable figure, but the things we choose to focus on are exactly as you said, this patriarchal hero story, as
Yeah,
opposed to the really genuinely nurture focused work that
that's right.
made them survive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
No,
yeah,
and
he was a real scoundrel.
yeah, and they are continually reinforcing that message for
For
men,
sure.
and even for women, or for women to be the accompanying other. And what you've done, though, is really, Soraya, you got to realize and let this in. Um, I mean, I'm familiar with it, with the authorial sickness of not always realizing that one has done very good work. It
Well,
just
I appreciate that coming from you. Really, it means everything.
no. But this is very true. You got this wonderful thing of perceiving what's happening in your body, because it's also a
Yes,
relationship with the body.
yes,
Is called
yes.
interoception. Um,
Mm-hmm.
one of the lesser known human senses. Uh, Proprioception, a related ability, tells us where our bodies are in space and imparts our selfless in relation to others. And together, these senses create our feelings of agency and time, both of which you are going to deal with later on in the book. Brilliantly, what you do with time is, I just think it's a first in feminist writing. So,
Oh, well, thank you.
well, it's true. Stop saying thank you and let it in, let it soak in, and preen for God's sake. But optimism and gratitude and grit, and I mean, I'm not saying that there's anything really wrong with them as individual feelings that pass
I
through
agree.
you once in a while, but to live with this kind of continual asinine grin on one's face is a bit much.
It's
And
a
I
lot.
yeah, it's this is a gem. Is it being taught anywhere? Is it going to be taught?
Oh gosh, who knows? I don't know. If it teaches anything, I hope that the one thing, if people read it, that particular aspect of self-sufficiency and grit, the focus on that
Mm.
is the thing about it that's so striking, and I know you recognize this, is that the asset that is women's free time, labor, effort, emotional work, all of that, right? That asset is erased,
Oh, of
right?
course.
In order for anybody to say, particularly men, to think I'm self sufficient, I'm gritty, I'm strong, I'm the protector, all of which we know is super central to masculinity.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You
Oh,
you
of
can't
course.
you just we just have to.
The essence of patriarchy, and it's
It is, and
also why they sneer at youth, because youth is they sneer idealistic and
yes,
cares about the tree huggers, and thank God youth is tuned into a different kind of
yes,
frequency. I mean,
that's right.
that could save the
And
world.
they're strategically pragmatic. This is the thing. Like all of the criticisms of younger people of Gen Z and Gen Y and now Alpha, those criticisms that their coddling of those children and their lack of grit and their lack of resilience and their lack of wanting to work,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it just
right.
ignores their strategic pessimism. And I always think of David Graeber, who said, if we want to, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, when you get right down to it, we're going to have to reconcile ourselves to the fact that if we want to save the planet, we have to stop working. Which, right? Like he went through every stage of thinking. He
Right.
knows what that pithy little phrase means. I think most people who maybe haven't taken the time or are not interested think it's ridiculous to say that, but in
Oh
fact, it's
no.
correct to say that.
Yes, it is. I mean, you've got chapter titles in this that are just delightful. Absolutely delight me. The necessity of negativity. is one. But
Yes.
another one, which is so important, is resisting the lure of productivity. And
Yes.
the lure of productivity, and everything has to get bigger and grow more, and growth
Yes.
is so important. And what that does, of course, to time is in terms of rushing, um, because it's a competition over growth, which comes down to money, which comes down to capitalism, which comes
Mhm.
down to patriarchy, which one thing always feeds into another. It is,
Yes.
the negativity is a strangely positive, refreshing dash of cold water on the face. I mean, it really is.
And yeah, and I think people understand that if you have to have some measure of realism, pessimism, call it what you will, to assess the situation you're in. Otherwise, you're just offloading the stress and anxiety and work to other people.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, but the interesting thing to me here is that you do this not only in terms of feminism, you do it straight out at the beginning of the book with patriarchy and
Right.
yeah, and how men are raised and maintained at that level of uh, loneliness, we can say.
Yes.
And what it does to them and what they then do to women. And then you move on, however, into every other possible field. So that there's economics here, there's resilience in the body, because we have a mind, body, intellect, body separation.
Yes.
There's the perceived myths of self-sufficiency, and misguided goals, and it's there's this whole thing of soldiering on the brain, which
Yes.
is, when you really examine it, absolutely ridiculous. I mean,
But it's so harsh.
yeah, and it's the call to sacrifice. You wonder,
Yes.
have people really fallen for this? But of course they have. It's called
The
wars.
level, yes, and the level of militarization in our theoretically peacetime lives, like the lives that we lead that are rife with gun violence, rife with paramilitary threats,
Mm.
and even like boys and gaming, right? The
Oh
complete
yeah,
immersion into war culture.
yeah,
And you see it in the microfascism of the right now, right? The kind of lone wolf, stochastic terrorism of the right's paramilitary movements.
right, yeah.
We're just missing. I mean, you really wrote about this 20 years ago after 9/11 and around 9/11, and here we are in spades,
I know.
and we're just not meeting the moment. I think people really have stuck in their heads, that there's some kind of top-down order happening, and that's not how this is working right now. It's leveraging the distributed networks of the internet, and
Yeah.
it's really using resilience narratives to propel boys and men into these associations.
I know, and that's an interesting thing that you touch on as well, which is the the resilience of the authoritarian right,
Mm-hmm.
and how they get seduced and lured and maintained in those positions, and then
Yeah,
solidified in those positions. And I mean, you watch it spreading across the planet now, and
you really do. You can see it.
yeah, it's absolutely terrifying. And
How
we
would you? No,
what?
go ahead. Sorry.
No, you
No.
go,
What were
you
you going
go.
to say?
Well, I just need to know that it's terrifying, that I'm afraid of the resilience of an authoritarian right
Yeah,
being
I
being
agree.
really resilient in all the wrong ways,
Yes.
using um Macht schnell, Achtung,
Mm-hmm.
for their own purposes, because it fits so perfectly, before we can, get our boots on.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think even it's amazing that Trump's particular
Ugh,
his uncanny use of language and his ability. He's the quintessential bully.
yeah,
He has that unerring ability to find the weakness, right? To find the point.
And lean on it.
Uses and lean on it. And he's very effective at using language to signal. His wolf, sometimes he's a blunt force instrument who's just, when he's not just rambling, but he can just, it is very impressive to watch. And this is someone who I really intensely dislike and fear because, but he does have that ability. And I took this out because it was just, the book was very long. We were trying to cut it down, but I had written a lot about the way Alex Jones and Steve Bannon in their building of this community over the past, decade. And they really actually used the word resilience and the language of resilience and the promise of resilience to signal to their listeners over and over and over again. And then you saw it kind of reach an acme in Charlottesville, where her hire was killed. And those young men were there with signs referring to their resilience,
Oh, absolutely. You will not replace us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jews will not replace us. Black people will not replace us.
Everything.
And you pose that in opposition, or you see that it is, you rediscover that it is in opposition. Everything is in opposition to it, because by this, the looming sensation of sustained sadness and stress. I get teary reading this. That comes with situations ranging from having incarcerated family members to living in refugee camps. You might feel it when a child leaves home, or when home no longer exists or is inaccessible. It's about the anticipatory mourning of climate change that millions of people are experiencing, which is also a form of ambiguous loss. That's a phrase you say coined by Pauline Boss, the psychologist. A relational disorder caused by the lack of facts surrounding the loss of a loved one. That is just heartbreaking and insightful in a profound way.
Well, I mean, I think we all know this feeling, and the idea that you are going to proceed from trauma to recovery to growth, and that there's there's closure and progress and
closure.
Closure. Closure. And that's a rare thing, in fact. Most people who are experiencing this grief, and especially I think young people living with anticipatory climate grief.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of older people who don't maybe recognize that was true of me. I just wanted to ignore it, and I just couldn't imagine my entire country disappearing underwater.
Yeah.
And that will happen at some point, if not entirely, then substantively, like significantly, I mean. And that's really hard to wrap your brain around, just psychologically.
Yeah.
But when you have that open-ended grief of someone missing or gone or there or not there, as in the case of dementia, for example, with my dad, you can't go through those.
Those are such moving passages, the stuff that you write about your father.
Well, thank you. I think when you're a writer, that just helps you kind of process the things. But
because it's a very personal book at the same time. I mean, you're not approaching this as a objective social scientist and commentator.
Yes, that's right.
Boring, and no passion, and no, that's not how you're approaching it, both around the whole 360 degrees and from within, and that's where the reality actually lies, and the time it takes, which is I've been writing a lot about time lately and thinking about it, and it's a dimension that our species does not relate to very much. I have a whole thing about hyacinth time, because hyacinths.
What is hyacinth time?
Well, hyacinth time is whenever hyacinths feel like coming into bud.
That's good.
I
too am completely obsessed with time.
Yeah.
I am literally obsessed.
I mean, I wrote a whole long poem about hyacinth time, but hyacinths don't give a damn. I mean, that's not.
No,
That's right.
they some springs is a chilly spring and they come in later, and other springs has come in earlier. But when do they come in? They come in hyacinth's time. They make their time. They make it. They create it.
That's right.
They are
That's right.
parties to it, responsible for it. And I mean, and if everything were similar in that cooperative fashion, because it is cooperative, it isn't competitive. If it were, that would be insanity. But this is very cooperative and funny. I find it very, very funny. You know, there's good God, I mean, there's you know, there's every kind of time.
There is.
But it is unique to the thing itself. And each of those is very specific at the same time. You've done this wonderful thing of quoting very smart people who have made remarkable comments that stick in the mind, like the poet Carolyn Williams. Carolyn
Randall.
I have rape colored skin. I mean, my God, and that's there you go. That's almost all you need to know.
That is almost all you need. That's right. And people don't want to think about it. They don't want to consider it. I will say that one of the interesting things to me about time, if I had the time, I would love to write about this, but the ways in which time also gets distributed. I sort of talk about it in terms of progress, right? Progress.
Oh, yes, and who has the power?
Who has the right
to define time, to make time, or to take time?
To take time or to claim the future, right? The idea of progress being embedded in certain identities and backwardness being embedded in others, right?
Damn right, Island time. You speak of island time.
Island time. Yeah. And, you know, growing up on an island, you know what that means.
Yeah, it sounds so wonderful.
Well, it sounds wonderful, but it also is that backhanded comment, that backhanded, you know, that insult that you're not with it, you're not modern, you're slow, you don't quite get it, and we'll dip our toes in here for a while, but then we're going to go back to the real world.
That's right.
But I think that's true gender-wise too. I think that one of the real frictions is just that we are socialized as men and women in totally different tempo orders, and of course, the one that is the standard, the one that dominates, is men's.
Yeah.
And so women are constantly paying the real price of that friction.
That's right. Yeah. Well, this is a wonderful book. It's called The Resilience Myth, as in it's a myth, folks. The Resilience Myth, and it's got a long subtitle, which he put in there so that our editor wouldn't have a stroke. New thinking on grit, strength. New thinking on grit, strength, and growth after trauma. That's a whole big mouthful.
It is.
She could have stopped right with a new thinking and put an exclamation point after it. And
that would have been great. I had a long discussion because I was like, wait, but I'm saying that the concept of after is wrong. The concept of after has no place here. But, you know, that's why if someone reads the book, they'll see why.
Yeah, please. And please read the book. The Resilience Myth. It's very important, and it's important for people in every aspect of this change. If you're an environmental prioritist, if you're a feminist prioritist, if you're whichever aspect of this you want to take on and fight for and lovingly care for, which is even more to the point, is in this book, and ways of how to do it. And you start by realizing what is a myth and what is not. So thank you for this.
Thank
Soraya.
you. Really, it's always so wonderful to talk to you, and I really appreciate your inviting me to do this today.
And it's time for our final break, but don't go away because I'll be back in just a moment with some fighting words. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
My impatience grows with age. Those are fighting words. Last year, President Biden signed into law as a hate crime, formally, the Emmett Till anti-lynching law. It was not illegal to lynch until last year. Now, one of these days, they might actually get around to the ERA, or even, perish the thought, CEDAW. CEDAW, which stands for the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW. It's a landmark document that's usually described as an international Bill of Rights for women. And it's been 45 years since the United Nations adopted it. The multilateral treaty both defines discrimination against women and establishes an agenda to end it, binding nation states that have ratified or acceded to the convention to identify, investigate, and correct gender inequality. Seems pretty simple to me. As of March 2024, just last month, 189 member states of the United Nations have ratified the Human Rights Treaty. That is an impressive 97% of the world's countries. Now, it's also sadly true that many of these countries have somewhat modified their commitments to CEDAW's rules, like, for example, Saudi Arabia, or those countries which say, yeah, he can have more than one wife, or those countries which say, yeah, he can punish his wife physically, or those countries which have male guardian systems. Well, I won't go on, but there are quite a few who have modified their commitments to CEDAW's rules, but they are all legally bound to comply with its provisions. And if somebody wanted to bring a lawsuit at the International Court of Law, there would be an interesting problem that would come up in terms of their national rights to exist. Oh, by the way, let me interject that every year they have to show up, they have to send representatives of their governments and their lawmakers to the United Nations for a month to testify in front of the General Assembly as to their changes, their accomplishments, what have they done to better the state of women, what are the problems with it. They have to be queried by interrogators. There are rapporteurs who report on their status. And it's a sort of shaming exercise in front of the world community, and it's very useful. Because, of course, the only people who ever really apologize for anything and say, oh, we're not good enough, we didn't do enough, is Sweden and the Scandinavian countries, who, of course, are far ahead of all of the rest of us by many leagues. Anyway, it's a very nice exercise, and coming to CEDAW means that they're always trooping through New York in March, ready to represent what their country can or cannot do for women. Now, notoriously, the United States is not among them. Excuse me, you may have noticed. We are the only industrialized democracy in the world that has yet to ratify it. We join countries like Iran, Palau, Somalia, Sudan, and Tonga among the tiny handful of holdouts. Now, why is this? Why would the global, carrier of women's rights banners in drafting the treaty, we played a very important role in it. In a sense, it began from this country. Why would the standard bearer of human rights continue to resist ratifying the world's foremost women's rights treaty? We defined it, and we adopted it, but we didn't really yet ratify it. Ratification takes Congress, you see. Oh, that's a problem. There's a double problem in that we don't have the Equal Rights Amendment. And the usual runaround is, well, you can't have CEDAW because you don't have the ERA. But then, you know what it comes down to when you ask about the ERA? Well, you can't have the ERA because you don't have CEDAW. It's kind of enough to make you bash your head against the nearest wall. So it's particularly ironic because the U.S. played this huge role in getting CEDAW on the docket to begin with. Patricia Hutar who's an American woman, did significant impact, and so did the great Corinne Horrible, who was a wonderful precinct organizer at the most basic gut level in Minneapolis. They all had to do with the language, and it was tortured language, but it worked. They got it through. They got it through, steered it through so many of the first rounds, only to come up against Ronald Reagan. Carter was very much behind it. He was eager to sign it, and he did. But then, along with Reagan, came in the moral majority and came in the rise of the American right. And it's been quite a terrifying rise. It didn't start with Jesse Helms, but he was one of his earliest pals, Senator Jesse Helms. He served in Senate Foreign Relations, and he was against civil rights and gay rights and women's rights, and he was against foreign aid and foreign involvement. He was against art. He was against all art. It's very difficult to find things that Jesse Helms, who was a Republican senator, was not against. He was a major enemy of CEDAW and the ERA. And, you ask, well, what good would it do to have it today? Younger women tend to say, it's an old issue and it's dead, and what's the point of unearthing it at this stage? Don't we have most of its provisions? Well, no, we don't. For example, you couldn't have got rid of Dobbs in the recent abortion decision. The court couldn't have overthrown it if we had signed the treaty and if we had been on board with the ERA. There's so many things you simply couldn't have done. There are other things that would have put forward many obstructions. There are still other things that would have effectuated swifter passage of good things. You cannot have a basic role in drafting a treaty for American women that goes out to the rest of the world, and then also turn around and say, you're the indispensable country. You're the one country. You're the, exceptional country. Well, we're not. We're right down there with Palau and Tonga and Somalia. And we have one of the worst records of any country in ratifying human rights treaties. But one exemption from such treaties as CEDAW that does huge damage to American citizens' access to rights we're entitled to as human beings as our human rights, and our politicians fail to protect those rights by failing to codify them and put them into legally binding treaties. So, when Roe v. Wade was up for grabs, this would have come into play. This would come into play over so many racial inequities. This would have come into play over so many sexual and gender inequities. See, the unique Americanism that thinks we're immortal and unique would be punctured, and publicly. So I say, even though I can hear my younger sister saying, oh, grown, 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 now she wants us to go after CEDAW. My God, that's such old stuff. Or even the ERA. Well, she does, you know. She's greedy that way. I am greedy that way. I want some basic human rights for women. And I want them before I die. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So I want you to have them, at least, before you turn up your toes. Because to do otherwise, well, that leads to fighting. And not just fighting words. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.